and say welcome one more time and hello to Janet who showed up mid-prayer. It's kind of like when you like get to sacrament meeting and like you open the door and then like, oh, they're doing it. Oh, that's all awkward. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Sorry about that.
This is not awkward because I didn't notice you were able to like you were able to just sneak right in without any disturbance whatsoever. So you're stealthy. You are like a Zoom ninja, pretty much.
It's just a good thing my microphone wasn't on and you can hear my boys and the dog in the background. Then I would have been really.
Right. Let's see, I've got so many windows open here. My wife's always like, how can you tell what's going on? And I'm like, that's my secret. I can't. I'm just making stuff up as I go. So let me get to where I want to be. And then I'll be ready to answer questions or cover concepts here. Maybe, come on, load byui.instructure.com. It's a slow loader. All right. So what I guess before I try to like launch into randomly talking about things that I think may be helpful to you, it would be terrific if you had questions that we know will be helpful to you because they're your questions. So why don't we start with any questions, either general, like, you know, broad, like, so what's up with this thing we have to do and what are we supposed to do about it? Or specific, like this one problem's killing me, help me work through it. Anybody have questions to start with, and then or other, I guess it would just be questions or other things. I don't know what else it would be besides questions. What questions do you have? And if you don't, then you guys are just super smart. So.
Oh, I'm not super smart. Janet, you go ahead though.
You sure? You can go ahead. It's okay.
No, I went first last time. Your turn.
So I just have a question. The paid in capital in excess of par value or a stated value. So is that just a separate, what do I want to call it? A separate account under retained earnings, or is that?
Yeah, so it's not under retained earning. It's under stockholders' equity.
Okay, yeah, equity, sorry.
Which, so if you think about it, all stockholders' equity is either the money put in by the owners. In other words, the owners invested money into the company. If it was you starting your own company, it would be like you taking money out of your personal checking account and sticking it in the company's checking account. And now the account has assets to operate, or the company has assets to operate with or money that the business has earned, meaning you sell stuff to people, you get revenue, you pay your expenses, and whatever's left over, if you don't pay it back out to you as a dividend, then you hold it into the account of the company as a retained earning. So depending on the state where the business is incorporated, some states require in the incorporation documents a par value for the stock. So and it is truly an arbitrary number in a lot of cases. Like you're creating this new company and you're like, I don't know, I guess $1 per share. I mean, it's really that arbitrary in some cases. And so because the company has a par value for the stock, as accountants will track it as what's the value of what the owners have paid in at the par value, plus how much of the owners paid in addition to that par value. So so if you add those two up, the paid in capital par value, or usually it's just common stock, it'll be called, or common stock at par or whatever, plus any paid in capital in excess of par, those two together will represent all of the money paid in by the owners for common stock. And so the short answer to your question is yes, it's just another account we use for tracking it. But it can be confusing. And the reason is, like, let's say when we start a company, maybe we issue the shares out to investors at the par value. So if our par value was $10, we sell shares to the investors for $10 a piece, then there would be no additional paid in capital. But hopefully, if our company is growing over time, the market price of that stock will climb. And so now if we decide to issue more shares to raise more capital, we will issue, say maybe we can issue it at $35 a share because the market value has climbed. We're going to say we're going to still list what people invest in at the par value plus the $25 a share over and above that $10 par value. And we're going to keep track of them separately. Personally, and I bet you there's some like hardcore accountants who do this type of work who would say I'm wrong. Like, I think it's silly. I just think having no par stock, we just record all the money we receive from investors is easy and makes sense. But again, I don't do that sort of accounting very much. I do mostly like managerial stuff, decision-making accounting, and I don't know all the ramifications of why we would separate that. Short answer is we do.
Okay.
That was a lot of talking, sorry.
No, I wanted it explained like that. That's why I come to this, because then I hear all the extra besides the textbook that it makes more sense when I hear that. So that's great. So, okay, no, that's great. Thank you. Go ahead, Annalisa.
Annalisa, did you have one?
Yeah, so, as I'm doing review, preparing for the exam, we're talking about like the 4 main financial statements, right? Which is the income statement, statement of retained earnings, balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows.
Right.
But then in one of these later chapters, it throws in here trial balance, right? So if we're doing a trial balance, like where does that fall in the flow of these like 4 statements? Or is this like a supplementary additional one? Or if I was like, and I know there's like these 6 points to like what you would do if there was an error, but it kind of feels like we go through all of these and it's like, and then in this chapter, let's talk about this. So like, should it be like general practice in the flow of that? Or I guess I'm missing the connection.
Yeah. So a trial balance is really, it's not so much a statement for like external consumption, like an income statement, right? What I mean by that is an income statement, a statement of retained earnings, a balance sheet, and a cash flow statement. These are the 4 main statements that if I was going to a bank and saying, I want a loan, they'd say, oh, we want to see these statements, because they're kind of like done in a common format that anybody with a little bit of financial training has learned to read. A trial balance is more like a tool we use for preparing financial statements. So we get to the end of the financial period, and we then are going to just, if you think about it, it's just a summary of the balances of all of our accounts. Instead of trying to look at the ledger that has where we worked out what the balance of each account was, and a ledger can be quite big, or if it was old in the olden days when it was in a book, it would be multiple pages. Trial balance just summarizes all of that. It has every account and its balance, either a debit or a credit, and allows us to double check to make sure it balances, that the debits and credits balance. And then, so like, and again, what's a little bit silly about all this is now computers do all this for us. Like, I almost never look at a trial balance unless there's an error and I'm trying to figure out where the error is. Then it's a useful tool for me to do that with. So it's not a financial statement in the sense of something I'm producing to give to somebody else. Instead, it's this tool where I can see the balances of all my accounts. And often, from the perspective of like an accounting cycle, we would have an unadjusted trial balance, and then we would do our adjusting entries. Then we would have an adjusted trial balance. Then we would use that to prepare our income statement, use our income statement plus the trial balance to prepare our statement of retained earnings, then our balance sheet. And then we would do our closing entries and close that down to a post-closing trial balance to start the new period. So it's just a tool we use because it has all the balances of those accounts right there and makes it super easy to make the income statement and the balance sheet and so forth.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Sarah Rose, do you have a question? I mean, like, we're just going around the room, I guess.
I mean, I don't really have a question, but the one thing I struggled with, and I'm not sure exactly why, my brain works really good with math problems and organization, but if I look at a formula, I don't know, I struggle with it. But I had issues with the, and this is back a while ago, but the debt ratio, when I was doing the point, so it was like point so per many percent, it seemed like whatever I came up with, that the quiz didn't like my answer. And I don't know if that was a rounding issue or any
So
tips with that.
yeah, so common errors, I guess I see that like aren't true errors, because it's frustrating when you're like, I know how to do the math of this, and yet somehow I'm getting it wrong, right? And then it makes you question whether or not you really know how to do the math, or if you're misunderstanding something. And so in McGraw-Hill Connect, they'll have the little box where you input the answer, and then after it, sometimes it will have a units, like sometimes it will show it as a percentage. So if I come up with, if I divide it out and I get 0.08, well, that's the same as 8%. So if there's a percentage sign after the box, it wants me to put 8 in that box, 8 because it's at 8%. If there's not a percentage sign, it wants me to put 0.08. And so that can be confusing. And so you're having to kind of make sure you're answering, and I'm not sure this is what you did, but this is something I've seen over and over, where people are like uncertain of the units it's asking for. That was like in the very first problem when it said in millions, like way back, our first, where we were doing like Apple and Google, what are those called? Financial statement analysis.
Yeah.
And it said in millions, and like that freaked people out, because in millions actually means to take 6 zeros off of the information you're looking at, because millions are your units. So the $1 unit would represent 1 million. But it's so you have to, there's a learning curve, I guess, and being like, oh, here's what McGraw-Hill wants from me. But with the
Okay.
percentages, it's often that it will have a percent sign there. So it wants you to convert your 0.08 to, and actually it wants you to even carry it out to like 8.2%, whatever it is.
Okay. Because I
So
was doing my formulas in Excel and it
uh-huh.
was automatically rounding it. And maybe that was my issue, is that when I was putting it into the quiz, I even had my husband look at it because he's better at math than I am. And I was like, what am I doing wrong?
Right. Yeah, no, so if it's asking for the answer in percents, then make sure you multiply by 100. And if it's not, then you're showing it as a decimal.
Okay, perfect.
But yeah, it's frustrating at times.
Yeah,
You're like, I could swear I knew how to do this, but it's wrong.
Right.
And then you're like, don't swear. It's not nice.
Yeah.
Neither by heaven, for it's his throne, or by the earth, because it's his footstool. We don't swear. Okay, anyway, I read that somewhere. Let's see. Paulo, I saw you popped in. Did you have any questions you wanted to, or are you just here to kind of hear what everybody else is asking?
No questions, Professor.
Terrific.
Yeah.
That's a nice picture. You look very distinguished.
Thank you.
Very professional. So Janet, other questions you have?
Whoops. I know there was some others. I'm just looking through because I should have written them down, but I didn't.
I understand. So right now, while she's looking for that, anybody take the exam already? Yeah, and without like giving away information, Sarah Rose, do you have any advice for your classmates?
Take your time and read everything pretty thoroughly, because there were a couple times I had to really like, okay, jog my brain and make sure that I read it properly.
I think that's good advice. Another piece of advice, someone had emailed me today and I forgot about this issue, and I actually added an announcement for it today, but it's super when you're doing it, the dumb Proctorio thing covers up the next button on the bottom. So you're like, how do I get out of this question? And a few people accidentally hit submit because they feel like it's the only button they could hit. They think maybe if I'm submitting the question, and then it submits the whole exam with like one question answered. And then they're in total freak out mode, right?
Yeah, I did a panic for a second. I was like, oh wait, I can move this.
Yeah. And that, the little box from Proctorio, there's actually that you can choose hide and it will hide it. All it's saying is like, it's in essence letting you know like the camera's on, and I think it'll let you turn it off, but then that will avoid your exam. So don't turn it off.
Yeah.
Anyway, so just be aware of that one. Like that's not so much about the content as it is like this thing that like on the first exam always gets people every time. So like, I don't know what to do. So look out for that.
Yep.
But
So
the
you could
exam,
just move it over? Is that what you said? You can move the little proctorial thing over or no?
Sarah Rose,
To
were you
get to the next question?
Yeah, so when it pops up, and it pops up at the very bottom where it wants you to like hit next, if you just kind of click on that box, you can move it to wherever you want it on your
Okay.
screen.
out of the way somewhere?
Yeah, I didn't hide it. I just moved it to where I knew that there weren't, nothing important was going to be.
Okay.
And like, I think I mentioned this before, but like, don't let Proctorio freak you out. Okay. It's not going to like, because people are like, it's going to like kick me, my kid ran through the background or my dog, just as a random example that has nothing to do with anybody in particular in this
My
group.
dog right now.
But like the Proctorio is going to throw me out of the exam. It won't do that. The very worst thing it would do is it would flag it and send an email to the instructor saying, review this timestamp. And then I'd be like, oh, it's just the dog wanting to go out. So not a big deal. Or whatever. So don't let it like worry you, because I know that Proctorio is scary for some reason. It's like the evil robots are taking over the world, and now we're subject to their whims, and they're just like, no, you fail. No, there's human review, so don't worry.
So, but the exam it's still through the textbook format, the same thing. It's just using Proctorial.
Yeah. And so that's a good question. And maybe I should go over it like here, because it's a little bit weird and like it freaks people out at the first time, because it's like, I had someone email me going, why are there 2 exams showing up on my timeline, right? Because if you look at it, let me share my screen. Like when you're here in the home screen, you'll see like week 5 exam 1, and then like week 5 exam 1 remotely proctored. And that's weird. And I think the people who designed the course would love to make this go away, because it's just confusing, but there's no real easy way to do it. But if you're in the modules themselves, you wouldn't see that. But if you're in the module, okay, I hate when it does that. Okay, then the only thing you see here is this week 5 exam remotely proctored, and it's only worth 1 point. And people are like, what does that mean? The way it works is there's no way to get Proctorio to engage directly with McGraw-Hill for some reason. I guess they haven't come up with that. So you have to enter here in Canvas, and then the Proctorio is tied to this Canvas quiz. And so then you really need to read these instructions carefully and note if you have problems with it to contact Proctorio. Then you can do live chat, or you can call them. They're actually super responsive. Anyway, you follow these instructions in here, and then you click here to take the quiz. And when you do that, it'll let you do it. For me, it's saying preview because I'm in instructor mode. I won't actually be taking it. If you get prompted for a passcode like that, and you're not on the screen where it's giving you the passcode you can put in, what it means is your system's not interfacing with Proctorio correctly. And so, because the passcode is put into Proctorio. So if you get prompted and you're like, I can't move forward because I don't have it, the best thing to do is usually to exit out of it, come up to your plugins or your extensions, reinstall that Proctorio plugin, and then that fixes the whole problem. But that's another thing that tends to freak people out. And you're supposed to leave this quiz open the whole time, kind of in the background, as you're taking the exam in McGraw-Hill. So when you enter this, let me see if it lets me go in there without showing. All you'll get is this single quiz that has 1 question, and the only question is like, I confirm I follow the honor code and didn't cheat, in essence. And it gives you the passcode to the exam there, so that when you click the link to the week 5 exam, this is the passcode you'll put in so you can take it. But you leave this up, and that allows Proctorio to sort of watch you take the exam. Anyway, and so it's a little confusing because it's like these kind of multiple layers, but it's really not that hard. All you're doing is going into the quiz, clicking on the quiz, it opens up. Then there's a link in that quiz to the McGraw-Hill exam. And if you read the instructions, it tells you all that. You click on it, you put in this little exam password. You take the exam. Once you finish it, you come back out here, answer your quiz question and submit the quiz, and you're done. Okay. So, but it is just weird the first time you do it. The other thing that confuses people is this quiz has a super long time, like 5 hours and 40 minutes or something like that. And so they're thinking, oh, I have 5 hours and 40 minutes to take the exam, but they're trying to give a window on either side of the exam because you're supposed to have the quiz open the whole time you're doing the exam. And the actual time, I think, for the exam it's still plenty of time. It's like, do you remember, Sarah Rose? 180 minutes, is it 3 hours?
Yeah, I want to say it was like 3 hours. It took me 70 minutes.
Right.
So
If you spend the full 3 hours, your brain will be jelly.
yeah.
You'll just be like, not because it's any harder or easier, it's just trying to concentrate on anything for that amount of time is it's not good on your brain, and it's not good on your buns. Those two things will be sore. Although I have the nice little cushiony thing for my seat, so maybe I could do it. I don't know, even then, after about an hour, I just can't think anymore. Anyway, so I'm not sure my explanation of all this was helpful, or if it just made it seem more daunting. Kind of like when it's like when the mechanic is trying to explain everything he needs to do to your car, and you're like, dude, just do it, because this is just scaring me more the more you explain it. At some point, you just got to do it. What did my teenage kids used to say? You just got to yeet it out there. They don't say that anymore, but for a while, yeet was all the rage. All right. Other questions I can either answer or badly butcher an attempted answer to.
Is there any other advice you have for any of the problems or anything in there from these last 2 chapters?
So I guess not specifically. I think I have some general advice about the way these exams are structured. And one would be to echo what Sarah Rose said, which is like accounting in general, and these exams, the way they're written, are like it's an attention to detail discipline, right? It's all about, and it's like people who are like, I hate word problems. I'm like, oh, well, this is an entire class of word problems, so enjoy. So reading them very carefully and trying to ask yourself, like, before launching into working on it, what are they asking me for? And like narrowing your focus. I've always said, like, so I'm married to an artist, and she doesn't love accounting. She's super smart and she's capable, but her brain is global and accounting is not global. It's narrow. It's like, think about this one thing you're doing right now and just do that. And then move on to the next one thing you're doing right now. So if you can sort of hone in on that and stay focused on, so that's one piece of advice. The second is that, like, when you look at the study guide and it's like, know the accounting equation, assets equal liabilities plus equity. What they're really saying is also know that liabilities would equal assets minus equity, or the equity would equal assets minus liabilities, or that when we say assets equal liabilities plus equity, we also mean equity could be revenue minus expenses minus dividends, plus. So like, know it kind of backward and forward. Don't just take it at face value. I mean, and for some people that's so natural, right? If I say assets equal liabilities plus equity, their brain says, okay, well, that's an algebraic relationship, so liabilities also equals assets minus equity, or whatever. Other people, that is not natural to their brain. And so they learned that assets equal liabilities plus equity, and then they never went any further than that. And then when it's presented backward, it freaks them out. So really, like, take a look at anything that's like an equation form and make sure you're kind of understanding how the constituent parts of it fit together. And the same thing, I think, goes for the statements. Recognize that, like, the income statement gives us the net income, the revenues minus expenses, which is needed for us to complete the statement of retained earnings, because net income is part of our retained earnings. And that retained earnings is needed for us to create a balance sheet, because retained earnings is part of the equity section of a balance sheet. Like, see how those things connect together, and a lot of it like flows together much easier. If I don't know if that made sense, but I just told you to be narrow, and then I just told you to be more global and see how it all connects. I'm not sure that was good advice at all. Be both narrow and global simultaneously. I suppose
Can I
that's
add to that a little
Yeah.
bit too? I think I'm that way. Like sometimes I put myself in a box, so I like see it a certain way. And I love the like reviews and videos that you did. Is it okay to share that I found another teacher that does a similar thing that you do? And sometimes it helps me to watch like both of your
Sure.
like reviews or videos. Like she has a page with same thing. Yours says additional resources, hers is additional resources. And sometimes she just phrases it different. So sometimes if I can look at both, then I
It's even okay
understand
to
it.
say, I found someone else whose stuff is good and yours is terrible, if that's what you
It's
think.
not. It's just
I
sometimes I don't see it the same way.
I
And then
won't
I'm
be
like, oh,
offended if
wait,
it
if I
helps
put these two
students.
together, then I get it. So
Yeah, share that. Who is it, or where do you find it?
it's from Sister Johnson. Somebody shared it on the Facebook page for this class. So if you also,
Okay.
that's another thing. If you haven't joined the Facebook group for this class, that's super helpful. Like even just to have somebody tell you, keep going. I think it's helpful.
You can talk smack about your teachers on there, and
Nope, there's actually none of that.
really,
Yeah. But it is how I got the recommendation to try to get your class and set my alarm as soon as I could enroll, because it overwhelmingly people say to take your class, and that I used that too.
wow,
Yeah, I was like,
I'm
maybe if I get in
blushing right
right
now.
away, even if I
I'm
have to be
blushing a
on the
little.
wait list, like, yeah. So anyhow, just this is an additional resource
Is
supplemental
her name
that has
Catherine
helped
Johnson?
me.
I think is her name.
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, you know, it's interesting the way this class is there are like 40 sections of it being taught. I mean, you think about that with 50 students in each one. So we have a ton of students taking accounting, and there's a bunch of teachers who are not full-time teachers like me. I just teach this one class for BYU Idaho. And I think Sister Johnson's in the same boat. And so a lot of these people are like practicing accountants. And so they have valuable insights into some of the material. The downside though is sometimes there's so much material, you're like, how much additional material,
Right.
can I do
Yeah.
this? And so that's why I'm always hesitant to put too much out there too, because you're like, I don't want to bury people with side quests, or
Yeah.
whatever.
No, but that's good. It's good to hear everything everything extra, because I think reading the textbook, I don't know, my mind's like this, but then when I hear all your examples, it kind of fits it all together and explains it more. So
Hey, do you
I
know
love your
what
videos,
is
even when you just talk through it. Like you could read the textbook and I would probably still understand it more. So I appreciate that, because I'm like, oh wait, the way you said it and your inflection, like, okay, I get it now.
Well, thanks. What is that Facebook site for people who might want to, or is it something like do you know it off, or is it something you could like maybe share in the, as it
Yeah.
like go to the
I know.
weekly announcement next week and just put it or something under there as a reply to the announcement?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I bet there's people who
It's
don't know
just
about it.
BYUI Accounting 201 and Accounting 202 is what it's called.
Okay. And also, if you're not using the what's it called? The tutoring resources, there's some really good opportunities in there. I've heard really positive feedback about the tutors. I've also occasionally heard that someone didn't like, one tutor. I mean, that happens, but overall it's pretty positive. So know that that's there for you too. And you can even make one-on-one appointments with tutors and stuff like that there. If you ever get stuck. Of course, if you're trucking along and doing fine, you don't necessarily need to, but because that's another place where I post my like little additional resource so people from other sections can use it. And I think probably other instructors do too. So that's out there too.
So
Oh,
where are yours on there? So if we're under the accounting course on our thing and we go to tutoring, yours is listed under there, is that?
So right here, you can see my additional study resources for, oh, that's ACC 101. Here it is, Accounting 201, additional study resources
Oh,
is in there.
okay.
But that's also, it's easier to find that if you're in my section, you can just find it right in the modules. It's just a
Okay.
link to the same little, the same little thing I put together. But
Okay.
like this exam prep and accounting basics, looks like one of the class tutors put this together, a little video that, again, some people might find helpful and other people might say, oh, that's more stuff for me to look at. And that's, I guess it's better to provide extra help instead of less. Oh, who's that? Well, I saw the guy in the suit. I thought maybe it was you, Paulo, looking handsome there, but that's a different guy in a suit. Do I have my picture in a suit too? Yeah, I do, but I'm like 27 in that picture. That was before grandkids. BGK. Life changes when the little ones come. All right. Any other thoughts, questions, or otherwise? I think this has been a good use of 30 minutes. I hope that other people will check it out too, as it works for them.
Thank you very
Oh,
much.
I see some. Let me double check. I see somebody in the chat. I don't want to miss a question. Oh, that's just Annalisa saying, here's the link. There, Rose telling us she's bailing on us. She don't love you guys anymore. Actually, she has, a family to take care of, but we're good. All right. Well, thanks very much, everybody, for coming. Would anybody be willing to offer a closing prayer before we leave? Got really quiet.
I can, if you don't mind my TV in the background.
I can't even hear it. You have a good unidirectional
Okay,
mic, I think.
great. Okay. Our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this opportunity to discuss financial accounting as we strive to learn and develop and grow. We pray that as we prepare for our exams and study the material, that we will be able to have an understanding of the concepts and be able to apply them in a way that is meaningful. We're thankful for the time and dedication that we have in Brother Fox as our instructor, and pray that that will uplift and sustain him in all that he does, as well as the members of our class as we work through this course. We're so grateful for our blessings and pray these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in. Again, I hope you got something useful out of it, and good luck on the exam. You don't need luck. You have faith and the power of accounting. I don't know. Whatever it takes, right? All right. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.